bring about an interesting topic of conversation, viewers, as we talk about learning to live with coronavirus, as we talk about, more and more companies getting used to the idea of work from home, as we talk about opening up various parts of our economy during a COVID pandemic, and of course, the fact that this is not going to change. One other aspect is also sports. Now, sports has been badly hit because of coronavirus across the globe. Across the globe, tournaments and events and matches have been cancelled irrespective of what sport it has been. Tonight, I want to discuss what's the way forward. How do we look at this segment of our lives in times of a pandemic? And I'm going to start off with cricket. I'm actually going to start off with cricket because today there was supposed to be a meeting of the BCCI where a conversation on IPL 2020's future was expected to happen. Now let me tell you what are the various options that the BCCI can look at this point of time. They can either look at somehow organizing this outside India, various locations where the crisis may not be as bad as it is in India. They could look at organizing it in India, but with empty stands, with no spectators. And honestly, many will say, well, that's no fun. They could look at bringing in some spectators, but figure out a way of ensuring social distancing norms. They could hold IPL maybe at a later stage, just postpone it until we know in a few months what the situation is. Or they could simply cancel it for this year and simply look towards next year in 2021. Now we do know that the BCCI is exploring options and other venues. If it can't happen in India, can it happen in Sri Lanka? Can it happen in UAE? Several other nations have also offered. The fact of the matter is we're already seeing some amount of cricket being played at least in England. The England-West Indies tour is already on and they are trying to follow strict set of instructions. In fact, I don't know if if you guys missed it, but yesterday there was a very important, interesting story that came of Jofra Archer, who actually broke these norms, the security protocol norms that have been put in place to ensure that players do not catch coronavirus, and he decided to not follow those rules and take a detour to his home, and for that reason he's now been punished. It's the first such case during COVID times where a player is being penalized, and that's how interesting sports has become now. So I thought let's have a conversation about how we see sports and various games actually playing out at least for the next 1 year. What do players think about the fact that they've not even been able to get that much of practice right now? If there is a tournament tomorrow, how will they manage? What do players and athletes think about the fact that they may have to play in empty stadium without any spectators? And especially for Indian players, that's going to be so odd because you're so used to, thousands and lakhs of people in the stadium cheering you on for every big hit or for every big wicket. So what do they think of that? What about the business of IPL, business of cricket or any other sport? Some of the questions I have, I'm sure lots more will pop up, but let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining me this evening. I've actually got former cricketers Murali, Kartik and Dasgupta both joining me this evening. Thank you so much, guys. Also Charu Sharma, sports commentator, and Satish Menon, CEO of the Kings 11 Punjab team, also with us this evening. Kartik, let me begin with you. How do you envisage the next big game of cricket for the Indian team?
I wish I could see the crystal ball, to be very honest, but unfortunately I can't. And also you have to remember that it's India, which is, although it's one of the biggest countries in terms of cricket, and it does control whatever happens around the world, but you also have to remember that we are struggling with Corona. So to find a certain venue where with the vastness of our country, travel is going to be a huge problem. And you also have to remember that to have sport, you also need other things. It's not just about the crowd. Sometimes just to get the sport rolling, you can get the players in, you can get the media in, but still they have to travel. So it's not going to be easy till the time we figure out that the curve has flattened and we do find some sort of a remedy to this global pandemic. I think it's looking a bit bleak at the moment. Because at the end of the day, you have to ensure that everybody is safe. Just like Jofra Archer has been penalized for flouting team rules, you're putting others at risk. You are endangering other people, your fellow mates as well. So just one incident, or whether it's a stray incident or somebody who's got you're going to put so many others at risk. So to keep everything in balance and to do things is never going to be easy. So it's not going to be that easy to start, although everybody does want to start, and we know, as you rightly said, sports has taken a massive hit. It does provide employment to so many people from different walks or different departments. But at the moment, it's not as easy at all.
Deep, do you want to come on this, Deepta? So, on even when we do begin slowly, we've got the example of the England West Indies series that's happening right now. We have the example from football actually. The English Premier League has begun to hold matches. So there are these in various parts that we are looking at options of how we will go about restarting sports in big stadiums. Any thoughts on how we should go about it?
Right. So fair enough. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges as a country like India, like ours, we have is the traveling part. You mentioned about the European football leagues. I mean, they travel by bus, they travel by road. They really don't need to fly that often. So the traveling part is the biggest challenge. That's how I see it. And listen, we've got to live with it. As you started off by saying, this is something that's going to be there for a while. We still don't know what the future holds for us in terms of COVID-19 and everything else. So I think we need to kind of look at other options. And sports, as Kartik rightly mentioned, and you touched upon it as well. Listen, I mean, you've got to look at it as an economic activity. And if you've opened up industries, the other industries and all, I don't see any reason why the sports industry, with all the precautions, why can't that be open? And for example, the England West Indies series is on right now. So you have a template to follow. You have a very basic template to follow, which can always be tweaked based on your requirements, depending on the country. And option-wise, listen, couple of things. Obviously, travel has to be minimized. You can't travel. I mean, especially right now, for example, I'm in Calcutta. I can't fly to Mumbai. I can't fly to Delhi right now. So all that needs to be kind of normalized, or travel needs to be cut down to the bare minimum. Obviously, you're looking at places like, let's say, Mumbai, Pune, where there are 4 or 5 venues where you really don't have to travel. There is enough infrastructure in terms of hotels and everything else. So maybe a couple of cities, or you can divide the whole tournament into 2 halves, maybe hold one in a certain venue and the other half in a certain venue, and then can meet together for the semifinals or whatever. So there are options available, and as you mentioned, could be also be played outside the country. Sri Lanka is thankfully hasn't been really hit as bad as, let's say, most of the other countries, UAE for that matter. So those are definitely options. I mean, New Zealand has opened up and they've asked if they can host it. But obviously, you've also got to look into the business of IPL, which is the exchange rates and everything else. So I think it should open up. When, I don't know, but yes, as and when it opens up, few things that you have to keep in mind, like travel and social distancing.
No, even as we're speaking, our own reporter is sending us information, and this is what she's picked up from her sources on the BCCI Apex Council meet that took place. And there is no yet concrete decision. We weren't expecting a concrete decision today on domestic cricket at least, but there was a conversation that the thought still is that they're going to wait for the government clearance before taking any decision. But they are looking at venue options. Now, obviously, Mumbai and Pune have a really high number of cases. Pune is still a danger zone. Bengaluru, that was doing well, has become now a big challenge with a rising number of cases. Ahmedabad possibly, but then travel has to be looked into for the players. You will have to, explore options of air bubbles, and that's something that was also discussed. So the decision on IPL, of course, also depends on what ICC's stand is when it comes to T20 World Cup. Lots of factors at play. So I'm not going to actually, ask you, Mr. Menon, on what really is going on within the closed doors, what's the thought process. But I actually first want to ask you if you've had conversations with your team players and how are they surviving these last few months without any, without any activity and any action on the cricket ground?
Well, from whatever little we know, they basically, I mean, there's not enough match practice or practice that's going on. They're obviously not hitting the nets, but insofar as fitness is concerned, I think most of them are up to the mark. They're physically fit. They're preparing themselves for the season as also for playing for the country. I don't think that's ever an issue, but it will take them about 3 or 4 weeks. So you need a window of about 3 to 4 weeks for them to come back to the nets, get back their touch, and then come back into the tournament.
Okay, so let me ask you this: what's your view as somebody who's very closely linked to the IPL? Should we start exploring options of holding this overseas if it's not possible in India?
Well, I think that's a view that the government of India will take, or BCCI will take. I don't think we have much of a say. We will follow exactly what BCCI or the government of India asks us to do, and I don't think there's a decision on that as yet. And as soon as the decisions are made, we're going to be told about it, and then be prepared for it. From our side, from a franchise standpoint, we are ready for any place, any venue that they may suggest.
Charu, do you believe it's time we start moving on this, a little bit faster? Because COVID's not going to go away. For how long do we just wait and watch if the situation improves? I mean, honestly, the cities that did improve and opened up have now gone back into lockdown.
I think therein lies the answer. We have no choice but to wait as long as it possibly takes. I mean, who's going to be brave enough in this scenario to start organizing events? Because there are many pillars to society. And Tanvi, remind me, which is the fourth pillar usually considered?
Yes,
Right.
us. That's us.
So, if we start organizing sports events, I mean, the next thing, God forbid, if there's anything contrary, or if there's any even, one possible rumor or a case, or like a Jofra Archer, I think the whole world of sports will start suffering in India, because everybody's going to jump down on it. Remember, some, Murali and Deepu and Santosh have picked on a few important points. But I mean, for instance, we are not an industry, but it anointed an industry, but it is an industry, and it takes a massive amount of effort to get any event going. Now, we're also a country that's run very heavily, if I may say so, still collectively by the central government. And, we're not sort of as free as many other nations are to operate independently. I mean, the US, for instance, does not have a sports ministry. We do, and a very important one at that. So, who's going to bell the cat here? Who's going to allow it? Our independent states are taking their own decisions. The center's deciding something. The states are deciding something else. I mean, Deepu talked about the fact that we can't travel. So obviously we can't, get together easily because each state has its own little quarantine rule. There are many problems right now. So some sports, of course, are more easily organized. I'm not a big fan of esports, by the way. So, I mean, they can do whatever they want, but that's not, sport for me yet. I beg your pardon. I'm offering my biases. But in India, at this point of time, it'll take a very brave person to go ahead and organize an event, because the factors are not coming together well at this point of time.
So, if I'm not mistaken, NBA is trying it out, in smaller formats in United States. EPL is trying it out. They're actually figuring out ways of how to make it maybe a little more live-like for players in the stadium, minus the spectators, and what to do about that situation. You think they're being a little too adventurous, Charu, that now is not the time to push ahead with it?
Well, some nations have the luxury of having, should we say, more private space available to each person. I mean, say the US or the UK, as they've demonstrated now with their cricket, have the ability to create biospheres. I think to create biospheres in India is a little impractical, because, I mean, we're a fairly crowded nation. And, breaches of biospheres are going to be a dime a dozen. So maybe that's not quite possible in India. But in other nations where they can manage it and can cleanse and sanitize the environment, yes, sport can go on. And we don't have, other states saying you can't come here, you can't go there, you have to quarantine this, quarantine. Nobody seems to know what's going on in India. But other nations, if they're more organized and the government has given more of a license and people don't jump on the back, if they have a more sort of sporting culture, then I'm sure, they'll begin their sports a lot sooner than India, because for us, sports is still a luxury. I mean, on one hand, of course, everybody must play, health and fitness, this, that, and the other, but sports is considered luxury still in India. So it's going to unfortunately be a little low on the priority. We've got so many other problems in India that probably need to be sorted out before.
Okay, Kartik, do you have a view on this? The fact that maybe in England can afford to do it or in America can afford to do it, although they have, they've gone wrong with their COVID policies so many times that it just makes one question even if they have a coherent policy. But do you agree that maybe India shouldn't go that way and should wait and watch?
No, I said that before as well, and I'm completely with Charu on this because, see, it's a tough one. Team sport is a very tough thing to start. It's not just about the sport which you see. There are so many other gamuts which actually fit in. So if one goes wrong, everyone who's clamoring for the sport now is going to come down very heavily and say, "Oh, why didn't you do these things and take precautions?" So it's never easy. And also you have to remember that in Europe, as Charu rightly mentioned, the disciplines are very different. We are very population dense country, and for us also there are so many other things when we can't even listen to our own the directives which are given by the government. Can you imagine how many other things which need to be taken care of before putting a huge sporting event into play? IPL is huge. The machinery which goes along with the IPL is huge. There are so many people who come from abroad. Will they be willing to take the chance? Just for example, even if the restaurants have opened, would you go, Tanvi, would you go to, even with two of your friends and take the chance to go and sit and have a cup of coffee because you've been having coffee at home for 3 months? No, it's a tough one to take right now. So when you talk about a sporting event like IPL or even a bilateral event,
Kartik,
England is
I
different.
may get tempted into going and eating out, or I may get tempted, but I would definitely not want my bosses to find out about it.
That's exactly what Jofra Archer thought as well, that he didn't want the bosses to find out. No, but it's very, very tough. So it's a tough thing to, I know everybody wants that. Everybody wants a bit of normalcy. But unfortunately, till the time you don't have the curve flattening or finding out some sort of a medicine which is going to suppress this, to have a sporting event of the magnitude of IPL or anything else, you have to, as Charu said, you have to be extremely brave and extremely gutsy to take that call.
Okay, now there is this one other question that I have in mind, and we've been talking to professionals from various walks of life, from various segments. But what does a lockdown like this, how does it impact a sportsman? The fact that you're not able to train or play as much for months together, you're just locked up in one room, something that you're not used to at all. Deepdas, any insights into how do any athlete or how does any sportsman really deal with that?
Well, it's difficult for everyone, and especially for anyone like a sports person who's like, your schedule is fixed. You have a schedule, you wake up early, you go for your training sessions, or you have your practice sessions and everything else. And with all this uncertainty around you, it's extremely difficult. I mean, even if you want to train, what are you training for? You don't see anything in front of you, right? If you, like, for example, if you have a series coming up in 15 days time or a tournament in a month's time, at least you have some kind of a target that you want to achieve. You want to get fitter by that period, or a series or something. At this point in time, it's a very, very difficult situation. And like I said, it's not just about sports person. It's just difficult for everyone. And this uncertainty, it's very difficult to kind of keep motivating yourself to kind of keep at it, keep focused what you want to do. And, sometimes it's, and also mentally, because in terms of security as well, this is a sport where you're so much under pressure. There are people who are, before this lockdown happened, weren't sure about their places in the side or whatever. So can you imagine the amount of stress a sports person goes through? I'm just talking from a cricketer's perspective, but I'm sure it's for everyone out there, every sports person. The amount of insecurity is quite tough to handle. And that's the reason, I mean, you hear so much about, the mental issue, mental side of things, depression and everything else. I think there is a serious concern, and not just about sports person. I'm just talking about everyone. I mean, that's a serious concern right now.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely, and mental health for everybody. Anyone who, irrespective of what, if you're an extrovert or an introvert, to live in this kind of a condition for weeks and weeks together can impact anyone, and that's has become a big conversation point. But if I can just go across to Mr. Menon at this point, Mr. Menon, and I don't want to put you in a spot. But I do want to understand from you what happens to the business of cricket in such a time. And are you guys at least exploring what other ways can you look at to make some kind of money at whenever cricket can start again?
Oh, there's nothing like making some kind of money once cricket starts. Once cricket starts, it's bound to make money. I mean, I don't think any other sporting business makes the kind of money that cricket does. So I don't think that's our worry. That's the least of our worry. Sponsors are all willing and waiting. And I think technology is going to play a huge part in the future. I don't completely agree with these gentlemen on the fact that that we may have to wait forever, because like every other developed country, we should have to prepare ourselves for a situation. There's no guarantee about when the COVID is going to actually when it's all going to end and we can all be back to normal. I think this is the new normal. We got to start learning on how to live with this kind of a situation. Sports will have to follow certain new strict guidelines. Undoubtedly, you will not see fans, but I think the fans and the spectators are waiting to watch the game no matter what. They'll watch it from home. You have a 195 million television household. There's no reason why we can't start it under guidelines. Yes, you have to be very careful. Fans, you will see technology coming in and you'll see virtual fan chants happening. You will see audio streaming happening using apps, all this is going to happen. I think we're going to leapfrog into a new era where cricket will see, or sports will see, a different, way of being played out. So I mean, personally, my view is that as long as there are strict guidelines and of course BCCI and the government of India willing, we should actually be able to get out there and get the game going. Okay, it's also for the cricketers. I mean, it's I think for the cricketers. They also have a lifespan. You see, you can't be waiting forever, and you already have a huge bench strength. You got to get them back onto the field. I think all these become a huge part of the entire cricketing ecosystem. It's important to find a solution to get back to the field.
I feel that this may actually also be a true test, or a test for a true fan. Minus the whole, theatrics and all the excitement and the energy and the cheer in a stadium, that even those who are sitting back at home really sit back and watch it on television, enjoy. How would it feel like? Kartik, to you this question, and then maybe Charu can also come in on that. How does it impact a player when you are on the field, you hit a big six, or you get a great wicket, but there is nobody around to cheer you on? Will it play in the minds of the players?
I think it depends whether you're having a good day or a bad day. For anybody who's having a good day, he's going to lap up, he's going to feed off that energy and atmosphere. For anyone who's going to have a bad day, he's actually liking the quiet because there's nobody to jeer him or boo him. So it depends on which side of the coin you are or which side of the fence you are. But look, the entire spectacle of it is all about the atmosphere, isn't it? You feed off it, and once you go into a ground, you feel the buzz. It's not just the people alone. It's not just the sports people alone. It's also the crowd which enjoy doing that. It's also people, the media guys who enjoy covering all that, and that's what creates the entire spectacle. That's what creates the sport, whichever sport it may be, whether football or tennis or cricket. So it's going to be a different one. It's going to be getting adjusted to all these things. We already have different rules in play in cricket. So it's a question of getting adjusted to it, and also depends on when the normalcy comes. For me, you have to accept it if that is how it's going to start. I don't know when it is going to start, but if that is what happens. And I don't know, possibly Mr. Menon knows a lot more than what me, Charu, and Deep know at the moment. I just hope that there is no.
Yeah.
I just hope that there is no.
But he can't
What should I
divulge.
say? Sorry, no, possibly. Look, the cricketers have to still come and play, isn't it? We can't have a virtual game like book cricket happening from different countries. So that is something which has to happen for sure. But yeah, from a crowd point of view, yes, it is going to take a while for people to come to terms with it. But again, as we're all saying, if that's the new normal for a while, you have to accept it and plod on, I suppose.
Well, Tanvi, just to set the record straight, I mean, I
Charu,
know
what
nothing
is
else but
your view?
sport.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just to set the record straight, I mean, I know nothing else but the world of sport. So no one would be happier than me if sport were to begin 1 minute from now. But I'm just saying it's going to be a really tough exercise. I mean, we talk about it being an industry. The number of people, agencies that need to get together and all be pulling in the same direction is not funny. And of course, if you take, if you take only a cricket view, I suppose they can afford to create that kind of a biosphere. If not in India, if the government doesn't allow it, they can do it in other countries. So there's that one sport. But, that's a little myopic. If you take a sort of a macro view, there are many sports in India. And this is just going to be, unfortunately, one of those washout years. I mean, if the Olympics have been postponed, what are, the rest of the sports? And yes, it'll hurt the livelihood of a lot of people. I mean, just very quickly to jump to the fact that if sports are organized without spectators or that kind of atmosphere, yes, it's no fun. But let me assure you that, those who earn their living or those who are serious about sport are very focused. They're in the zone. And professionals are going to perform regardless of where you put them, in the middle of a forest or in the middle of a big crowded stadium. So, I mean, standards initially will be a little low because they haven't practiced or match practice is lacking, but they'll come back to it very quickly. So I don't think spectators is the be all and end all of hosting sporting events, even though I do believe that fans are the biggest part of sport. No fans, no sport. But I mean, most of the sports persons at the top level are professional. I mean, if you take a sport now, shooting, for instance, very big sport in India because of the medals, now allows fans and a little bit of noise. Earlier, it didn't.
Yeah.
So if there are fans or not, you'll still be able to shoot with that same level of focus.
Okay, you will be able to shoot with the same level of focus. But do you foresee a situation, Charu, where we may have these artificial cheers being set up within the stadium itself, not just for the television programming part of it, where you can have the preloaded cheers, maybe like you do, in comedy, comic series. But is that something that may be explored? Because, people are so used to all of that noise and music and loud cheering that happens, especially in a game of cricket or even football.
Tanvi, that is the last part of the puzzle that needs to go in, the cheering. Because the 99 other things that need to be done, that need to be done to organize an event well, they are the tough ones. The chair you can pump up on the volume, is the last thing that's required. But it's all the rest, and especially in a country like India, where you have to deal with multiple agencies and multiple states and travel is such a big problem. I really think that, like I said earlier, it'll be a very brave organization that takes the first step. But to say again, I'd love for sports to be back in Bangalore. Unfortunately, there's a problem where I live now. It's locked down. But when it wasn't, we were playing golf every day and tennis and having a great time. So there's certain sports that lend themselves to a more sterile environment or less, problematic environment. But even that is all shut. So everything gets clubbed into the same umbrella, which is unfortunate. But, in a big country with so many things to think about, I think, these minute decisions or these sort of micro decisions, unfortunately, will get lost in the face of a major lockdown or a major decision across the country.
Yeah, you would think that, golf would perhaps be the first sport that, should open up and, people should be allowed to go and play at least that. But you're right, it's not happening anywhere right now, especially in cities where we are seeing a big spike. I just also wanted to ask Kartik and Deep on what they thought of what Jafra did.
Tanvi, except, of course, Murali, who's been playing with the pros now. Except Murali, who's been playing with the pros and doing really well in golf. So he's doing all right.
Okay, so Murali, on that point, well, you then are in a lucky location where it's not been shut down. I mean, I hear my father really complain about it every single day. He's desperately waiting for it to open up, but then where he lives, cases are still spiking, so it can't happen. But Murli, what did you think of what Jofra Archer did? And is that something that will play on, in the minds of the players even when we restart? Because COVID's not going away, and so we will always have to be, at least for the next 1 year, always have to be cautious, always have to follow these protocols. But the danger that somebody else may not be following, will that become a factor?
Yeah, that's something which is preying on the minds of many people already, because everybody wants to lead a normal life. And when you're in biosecure environments, and that's exactly what England has tried to create for this series. They've had a long, hard look at what they wanted to do. The kind of camps they have held have also been very different. And also the way they are rotating players is the reason why they are doing it. So, and also for a player, when you come into a team environment, you do buy into whatever they say, whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it. That is something a player needs to do. That is why we all play a team game. Yes, we have different individuals with different needs and different habits. But unfortunately, when you play for a team and when you represent your country, there are things which you need to embrace and follow to the T. And I feel that over there, many of his fellow players are going to feel let down, because at the end of the day, we don't sit in separate rooms. We sit in one single dressing room. And it's a huge, what should I say, convoy of people over there. It's 20, 30 people. That's what travel with team nowadays. So one person putting himself at risk is going to put the others at risk as well. So, and more than anything else, if there is something which the team has set, and if you flout it, obviously people are going to feel let down.
Deep, do you have a view on this? Will this become an important factor? And, especially in countries like India, where the minute you step out or step away, you probably end up in a very crowded location or a closed public space, which becomes a big threat. How does this then play on the mind of any player?
I mean, it's going to be difficult, especially in a country like ours. It's going to be extremely difficult to kind of create those biosecure bubbles, one. Secondly, and also, I mean, kind of keep the people disciplined to kind of stick with those rules and be disciplined enough to be in that biosecure bubble. I mean, it's going to be difficult. We know it. I mean, listen, I mean, we don't stop at red lights here. I mean, what are we talking about here? So, I mean, so those are going to be
So let me ask you another.
Yeah.
Right. Let me ask you another thing that may or may not be difficult. I don't know, but you can tell me. This ban on use of saliva for shining the ball. Will cricketers get used to this? Because I don't think even if we find a vaccine for COVID, people will want to go back to that kind of a routine.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. This is a seriously tough one because, I mean, it's such an intrinsic part of the sport. I mean, saliva, right? I mean, you subconsciously you throw a ball at me, or if I have a ball in my hand, subconsciously I'll start putting saliva on it. So it is a tough one, and it's going to be extremely tough when when India goes to Australia and England. We've seen the effect of it, but it's not going to be as bad as when there are test matches being held in the subcontinent, or where India goes to Australia with those kookaburra balls on those flat, bouncy Australian hard pitches, subcontinental pitches. I think that's where you really, really will feel the ban. The bowlers will feel the ban, not everyone. Kartik will be one of the first to talk about it. And yeah, I mean, as of now, in English conditions, it's still all right. You won't. I mean, you'd feel it, but not as bad as the other venues.
Kartik, you want to add to that?
No, look, from the time this rule came, things which I've questioned is the logic behind it. For me, you're going to get only asymptomatic COVID negative people coming and playing. And please ask anybody who's played the sport this. Saliva has been used for the sake of viscosity from the time the game was brought in. And different people use their own sweat, their own spit, and we've all been fine for so many years. Nobody has gotten any bad bacteria. Nobody has fallen ill because of having used spit on the ball. It goes through the grime it goes on the turf as well, and still we use the spit, and it's all been fine. For me, it's just the logic behind it. When you're only going to get 30, 20, or 25 to 30 people who are going to be COVID negative coming and playing the game, why can't we play it the normal way? So these are the things which are tough, and that's why I feel that when such rules have been put into play, even if one stray case happens, or even if something happens, it's gonna be a tough one to start something with a lot of confidence. So I know white ball cricket is very different, but still, even there, saliva and spit are used. So it's gonna. Let's see. That's my take on it. That's my take.
I can't believe this is going to be the last thing that we talk about. But on that lovely note, thank you so much, all of you gentlemen, for joining me on this conversation. I think we all agree that for a foreseeable future, sports and the way it's conducted is going to change. We'll gradually perhaps discover, but just like any other part of our lives, the way we are living now and then the way we will realign ourselves, at least for the next couple of years, is going to drastically change, and sports is going to be one such thing as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Let's wait and watch. If there is a decision anytime soon, maybe after ICC decides in the World T20 Cup on what to do about IPL, but I think the players and the fans definitely want some amount of sporting activity to restart in the near future. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this conversation.